The ninth live-action Spider-Man film, I'm not counting the TV movies from the 70s, has been out for a couple weeks now. I'm a little late to the party seeing it, but I really enjoyed it, 8 out of 10, and I wanted to share what I appreciate most about it. This will be replete with spoilers, so feel free to enjoy the movie first and then come back here. One of my first thoughts after exiting the theater was this felt like an arc in the 90s cartoon come to life. It had that interconnectedness that Spider-Man, the animated series, and the comics have, where Spider-Man can bump into and team up with just about anyone from any corner of the Marvel Universe, because that just makes sense in New York. Punisher's running around. Bruce Banner is teaching at Empire State University. And oh hey, there's a member of the X-Men. On a meta note, we're seeing characters from Sony, Netflix, Universal, Fox, and Disney all come together. And even without doing all the homework, I actually love doing all the homework, and even if you feel it a little contrived that these characters are in this movie, it makes sense for them to be there. Two street-level heroes have had run-ins with each other before? Shocker. A founding Avenger and the leader of the new Avengers hang around what is essentially the Avengers city? Yeah, I'd imagine so. A troubled kid with superpowers is causing a ruckus in the city with the most supervillains per capita? Color me surprised. This feels like the city the comic greats walked around and wrote about and sketched and inked and colored, and I love it. I think it's easy to see the MCU version of Peter Parker as a kid. He started his hero's journey at 15, he was pretty much Iron Man's sidekick from Civil War to Endgame, and most of the time he's interacting with adults is as a teenager being chaperoned or as a naive kid getting schooled by one. Tony, Aunt May, and Happy Hogan look out for him. Vulture, Mysterio, and even the Green Goblin get the better of him. And to be fair, up until No Way Home, he was literally a child. By Brand New Day, he's 21 years old. His former friends are graduating MIT next semester. He's been living on his own for the past 4 years, since Aunt May died, and anyone who could have helped him doesn't remember him. We don't know if he has a job, but we know he lives modestly in what used to be in a storage space that probably has an asbestos problem. We know he has the trust of a few seasoned adults, the Punisher, Detective Wolf, and even the Director of Damage Control. We do get some hint that he's grown up, but beyond the hints, we do see it in two important respects. Firstly, in how he handles rejection and disappointment. Peter's held out hope that his friends and his love MJ will, some way, somehow, remember him, despite the spell that wiped out everyone's memories of Peter Parker at the end of No Way Home. He carries around a letter he wrote to MJ explaining everything, hoping she'll piece things together and rediscover the love she has for him, as his for her never faded. And to be fair, both Peter and the audience see hints of that happening. Ned has been trying to find Spider-Man ever since the last movie. MJ says she's long had a sense that she's supposed to be waiting for someone. When the three do reunite for the first time, Ned and MJ involuntarily spit out references to Spider-Man around him. By accident, MJ does end up finding and reading the letter. Peter tries to explain. He says they were very close. He says he loves her. She says she doesn't love him. She says she doesn't even know him. Peter is heartbroken and his hopes of things ever being like they were are shattered. We sit with him a moment as we see his world crashing down around him. In the next moment, MJ comes back into the room. They're in a remote place, she doesn't have a phone, and Spider-Man is her only way home. So, in silence, he swings her back to her apartment. No lashing out, no pleading, no blame. Just a silent lament. We see him capable enough to handle a crushing personal loss in a way that we couldn't be confident he had even 4 years ago. Secondly, we see how he deals with the vulnerable. Jean Grey is a telepath. She can read and control the minds of others. She has lived a life rejected by her mother for being different. Her older, also telepathic sister was taken by damage control for experimentation, and as a result she has come to believe that no one who isn't like her could ever accept her. At the climax of the film, Jean is at her low point. She's just discovered the sister she's been searching for the whole movie has been dead for some time. Her anger is turned to hate, and she's given in to the mistakes Peter's been making for the last 4 years, though entirely turned inward. She's shutting others out to avoid loss, and not really caring what others want if she feels it protects her. She's been living on her own and puppeteering people to get what she wants. And by now she's taken a good portion of the city hostage and is threatening to kill the person she deems responsible. She is lashing out and blaming others. in the hopes of things being as they were, are shattered. Despite her overwhelming and honestly invasive power, Jean is in turmoil and emotionally and morally vulnerable. So Spider-Man does a reversal. Instead of shutting her out, he shares a memory of Aunt May, who had no powers, but loved and accepted him after finding out that he did have powers. He promises to stand with Jean even though they're not quite the same. Instead of lashing out, he comes to her rescue. Instead of blaming her, he takes a bullet for her. Instead of the confused kid Tony, Aunt May, and Happy Hogan mentor and take care of, we see a man who has taken their lessons and become responsible for others. I really like the Home trilogy, but one of my main criticisms is how it intricately tied Spider-Man to Iron Man before and after his death. On a practical level, it makes sense. Tony brought him into the fold as an Avenger. Tony feels responsible for him, so why wouldn't he give him some tech to keep him safe while he's out fighting crime? And why would a tech genius like Peter refuse the privilege of access to Tony's toolkit? An unfortunate consequence of going down this route, from the standpoint of how Peter approaches superheroics, is that it felt like Tony's take on Spider-Man. At times it felt like it didn't matter who was in the suit. Not in the sense of anybody can be Spider-Man, but in the sense that, in some ways, the very presence of the tech guides the user to tackle problems in a specific way. If you have drones, thermal vision, and access to government databases on your opponents, your intuition and your Peter tingle are bound to become underdeveloped. To overextend a certain saying, when all you have is hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But credit to where credit is due. A through line of the Home trilogy is Spider-Man progressively coming out from under Iron Man's shadow and becoming his own hero. To pull on that spider sense thread again, this does seem to be the reason we don't see much of it until the Mysterio fight, and then again against the Green Goblin. But to me it felt only half realized. The exception, not the rule, especially as he bounced between his own movies and other movies in the MCU. My initial hope upon seeing the end of No Way Home was a total refresh. No Stark tech, no bailouts by the Avengers, just a clean slate with Peter being his own man. But with Brand New Day, rather than a hard reboot of this aspect, the showrunners wisely only scaled it back, and in a way that ties beautifully into the themes of the movie. At the end of No Way Home, knowledge of Peter Parker, and thus all his relationships, were erased. In the time since, Spider-Man has become his only real identity, and by refusing to reconnect with his old friends or make new ones, out of fear of them getting hurt and being hurt himself, he's gone a step further and erased Peter Parker from everyone's lives going forward. As a result, Spider-Man is alone. He has colleagues, not friends. He's a half-person. So, what does he keep from his time so closely tied to Tony Stark? His own Jarvis, a robotic assistant he uses as another colleague and as a substitute for real connection to others and to himself. Now, I'm no fan of AI. 99% of the time when people say they're using it as a tool, they're not using it as a tool. But as a concept, Evie works well in this film. As a non-person, she lets him hide within Spider-Man as a persona, and moreover, a Spider-Man persona that came from Tony. When his powers go awry, he specifically uses her to replace a function of his spider sense that isn't working because he's fighting the thing that he needs to develop as both Spider-Man and as a person. But when he does embrace that part of himself and starts his new normal, Evie is still around. He doesn't rely on her as much. She's still the heads-up display, she's still the police scanner, she still monitors his biosigns, but she's in the background. Though we don't quite see the man-spider many of us were speculating about, the stress of seeing MJ move on without him triggers a sort of spider puberty. Most notably, his senses heighten, he gets boosts in speed and strength, and he grows organic web shooters. His aggression also increases, causing him to lose control. What's significant is these changes clash with the Tony-guided Spider-Man that's existed up until this point. The enhanced physicality and senses do naturally what Tony's suits added. The organic web shooters, for some reason, can't be used at the same time as his mechanical ones. And to top it all off, his solution to this is one Tony would have come up with. He built an inhibitor to suppress this natural side so he can keep using tech. And this turns out to be the wrong solution. How he gains control is not another gadget, but by synthesis. He reconciles Peter Parker and Spider-Man, he accepts the inevitability of change, and he comes to believe he can trust the parts of himself that are unique to him, though without throwing out what he received from his mentors. Once he gains synthesis, he fights more like a Spider-Man. Yet, he clearly got his emotional strength from Aunt May, his trust in himself from Happy, and his willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice from Tony. It's subtle, but by the end of the movie I got a sense that Spider-Man is finally coming out of Iron Man's shadow in a meaningful way and becoming his own man. Not by outright rejecting Tony, or any of his mentors, but by taking Peter Parker's lead in a way that counts.